Registered investment advisor.
Hey Utah! When it comes to guiding the growth of our state, you buzzed in with your comments, and we listened to what you had to say. Your feedback on the future of Utah's housing, water, transportation, and open space will continue to help our leaders make important policy decisions, preserving and improving our high quality of life in meaningful ways for years to come. So, thanks for speaking up. Learn more about our state's future at guidingourgrowth.utah.gov.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Ricky Meese.
Valley Freeway traffic looking good, but we do have Salt Lake City PD on the scene of a crash, 1300 South and 4th West. Fill up your bucket list in Box Elder County. History, recreation, and wildlife, and excellent dining and shopping await you. Learn more at visitboxeldercounty.com. Sponsored by the Utah Office of Tourism. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
95 for today's high, then clouds clear up this afternoon, and there's a chance of thunderstorms and also a chance for storms tomorrow with a high of 90, drops to 85 on Friday. 88 degrees, partly cloudy right now. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as the dust settles on Utah's recent primary election, the results paint a pretty compelling picture in terms of what the state's political landscape looks like and will shape up to be. With politics, it's always about the art of the possible. It's never about what was or even what is. The question is, what's next? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, we'll take a quick scan of what is in the headlines as it relates to the primary elections from yesterday. But more importantly, we want to get underneath those headlines and look at some of the things you may not have been thinking about rolling through primary election day. Again, a late June primary is always an interesting thing, always difficult to really peg the numbers, as you never quite know who got that ballot in the box before they went on vacation or off to a camp or a family reunion. And so June primaries, especially late June primaries, are always difficult to predict. But things did pretty much hold true to form with a few exceptions here in the Beehive State as we had primary election day. But I want to look at just a couple of components to all of this. We talk about the art of the possible in politics, and it is about painting a picture of what can be. I think it's the real test, and I think it's one of the lost arts we've had in our political discussions is so much of it has been about what you're against. Very little time seems to be spent these days on what you're actually for. And I think that's a great disservice to the voters. The voters know what you're against, and they know who you're against. It's usually pretty easy to decipher all of that. But the real question is what are you for? And can you paint a picture of that in such a way that captures the imagination of the voters? And there were a few candidates yesterday in the primary that did that in some pretty compelling ways. I thought one of the interesting numbers of the night was actually in the race for the nomination for the Republican Senate seat. And with that seat, of course, being vacated, currently held by Senator Mitt Romney, you had four candidates in that primary election, all pretty well known. Three of the four, for sure, were not newcomers to the political stage. John Curtis, Brad Wilson, and Trent Staggs. Jason Walton was the newcomer and had some real resources to begin to get his name ID out there. So the interesting thing to me is, despite the fact that you had a lot of well-known candidates, you had the former president of the United States weighing in on the race as well, and yet you still had John Curtis above 50%. That's hard to do in a four-way race, especially hard to do when there's a lot of money coming into the state to promote the various candidates. So I think the fact that John Curtis got above 50%, which I believe every candidate should have to get to 50%. If you can't get half the vote, we got to rethink a few things. And so I think these multi-way races get really difficult, especially in a red state. The same thing would hold true in a blue state where you have the winner most likely to go on and win in the fall. But then you think about that in terms of percentages of the overall population. of the state, and is that really representative? If you have someone, for example, who wins with 26 or 27% of the vote in a 4 or 5-way race, does that really represent? And shouldn't they have to at least garner half the vote? Seems to me you got to get to 50% plus one. So the fact that John Curtis did that in a 4-way race, I actually think that's significant. That's worth looking under the hood at and exploring just a little bit more as things move forward. I think there were a few things that Representative Curtis did right to secure a win in that Republican primary for the Senate nomination on the Republican side. Of course, the House races went very interesting as well. The 3rd Congressional District is one that I think was a bit of a surprise. I think this was a 5-way race. A lot of people thought this would be pretty evenly split amongst the 5. And here again, you had Mike Kennedy running out to 37%. That's a big number based on a 5-way race. And then Case Lawrence came in second there. And this is one of those where it was really tricky to look at the numbers. I saw a lot of polling that was all over the place. I saw polls that had Case Lawrence in the lead. Saw polls where it was really neck and neck between Mike Kennedy and Case Lawrence. But ultimately, Mike Kennedy wins that with pretty comfortable margins with 37% of the vote. The race that has not been called yet, that a lot of people continue to keep their eye on, is, of course, the race for the House 2nd Congressional District, where you have Colby Jenkins and Celeste Malloy. Celeste Malloy has what I was referring to as the mini incumbency, in the fact that she'd only been in office for about 6 months as this race got rolling after a special election. So still name ID not super high, but again, a very competitive 2-way race, and that is one that has not been called yet. Currently, Celeste Malloy has a 3.5% advantage over Colby Jenkins. We are watching the clock. We are expecting to have a next tranche of votes tallied and released around 3 p.m. today. And my sense is if these numbers hold at about 3.5%, I think it's possible that could be called today. If it tightens up a little bit, then I think we'll be waiting for a few days while the rest of the votes come in. So very interesting. Stay here on KSL News Radio throughout the afternoon for when that next tranche of votes and numbers get posted by the various counties. And so in looking at all of that, there's a lot of interesting lessons, I think, in terms of the way candidates ran these things. I think there were interesting lessons around the value or non-value of endorsements. And did they really have an impact at all? Did they play a part in the direction that things went? Who relied too much on endorsements and not enough on hitting the street, pounding the pavement, pressing the flesh, and connecting with voters? That's where elections are usually won and lost. And so that's another interesting component that we've got to get to and continue to look at as we pivot now and move towards the fall election. The fall election, of course, is going to be flavored in a significant way by what happens at the very top of the ticket on the national stage. And, of course, tomorrow will be the first CNN presidential debate. And that will be an opportunity for the current president and the former president to face off for the first time in the 2024 election cycle. And, of course, we'll have lots of insight and lots of things to look at and look for as that process really begins in earnest. That will be tomorrow, but we'll talk about that a little later on in the show today as well. Also, we do have Representative John Curtis's my interview with him coming up here at 1:20, so stay tuned to that. Will be part of staying with the conversation and lessons learned from the campaign trail, which I think are always fascinating things. Always a surprise, always something kind of an aha moment that candidates have. And whether candidates win or lose, I think there's a lot of important lessons there as well. And then finally, just looking at it from the national stage, I think as the dust settles, I do think the tale of New York and Colorado are most instructive in terms of where politics is headed and what voters are tired of and what they're ready for. And again, whether you like a Democrat-controlled New York or a Republican seat controlled in Colorado, the lessons were very stark and very different. You had Representative Boebert, who just 6 months ago was in all kinds of political trouble and really on the decline and looking as if she was not going to be in the House much longer with her prospects and where she was. She made a pivot, and she did it pretty well. Again, whether you like her politics or not, you have to look at it and say, wow, she changed the conversation. She changed the narrative. She reinvented herself. She got off of social media and being in the news and being the news to focusing more on constituent services and focusing on policy and legislation. And it worked for her. Meanwhile, in New York, Representative Bowen did exactly the opposite. He doubled and tripled down on going to the left of his party, and he lost. And so he will not be returning to Congress in 2025. And it's one of those interesting things. We always talk about good staffing, bad staffing. And I think Representative Boebert got the staffing and did it, had the discipline to do it. And in New York, it just didn't happen. And the results don't lie. The math always wins in the end. All right. That gives us a quick recap of what happened yesterday. Some things underneath some of those headlines and numbers. We'll continue to watch everything else. And, of course, KSL News Radio has you covered for all things as it relates to politics and policy and what's happening in the election, and especially as we pivot towards the fall and that first Tuesday of November. And so we're going to stay with that part of the conversation. Coming up next, my conversation with Representative John Curtis, who did secure over 50% of the vote to become the official Republican nominee for that first Tuesday in November. My conversation with him coming up next.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. We're just days away.
I feel inspired.
The first debate for America's top job.
We're going to have great success. I think we're going to have a tremendous election.
Get full coverage and analysis from the Utah voices you trust to be fair. And listen to the CNN presidential debate Thursday night at 7. Simulcast live here on KSL News Radio.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This year has gone by so fast. Are you keeping track of your accomplishments? When was the last time you took a moment to celebrate your wins? When life goes by so fast, it can be easy to lose track of your goals and feel like you're spinning out of control. That's where BetterHelp comes in. Therapy can help you take a look at your progress and set realistic goals for the next 6 months. Therapy is for everyone because everyone deserves to be the best version of themselves. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's totally online, convenient, and flexible. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime. Take a moment. Visit BetterHelp.com/ABC Radio today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ABC Radio.
Honey, hello, honey. This has to stop.
Mowing the lawn? I can't. It grows too fast.
You planted grass in our bedroom.
Yeah, the green is a great compliment to the blue walls.
You planted grass in the hall and the kitchen, too.
I know. I love grass.
Yeah, I love grass, too, but not everywhere.
Does that mean I have to get rid of the riding mower, too? She handles great down the hallway.
Mom warned me there'd be days like this.
Grass doesn't belong everywhere. So now Utah Water Savers offers an incentive plan to replace your grass with water-efficient landscaping. Earn as much as $3 for every square foot of lawn replaced. Register at utahwatersavers.com and learn what incentives are available in your area. And if you thought money didn't grow on trees, guess again. Add trees to your project from a pre-approved list and you'll enjoy a tree bait. Reducing water use is one of the most impactful long-term changes you can make. So start at utahwatersavers.com. utahwatersavers.com.
Summer in Utah, and if you're a business owner that hates to paint, do what business owner Al did. He called Rhino Shield.
I was watching TV one night and saw the Rhino Shield ad, and I thought, well, if they can do a house, they can probably do a building.
Rhino Shield ceramic technology is formulated for our unique climate here in Utah and is Class 1 fire rated.
So they came out and they gave me a price, showed me how the Rhino works, how it lasts, and how the guarantee works.
Whether you own a home or a business, right now get the guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield for 10% off the regular price.
They waited for us to leave, and they worked Saturday and Sunday so they wouldn't affect our business at all. This was the great part of it. I came back Sunday night, and you couldn't even tell they were here. There was no paint on the ground. They did a fantastic job.
Utah, this offer is limited, so call 435-246-4466, 435-246-4466, or visit rhinoshieldwest.com.
Go Rhino!
Rhino Shield.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Our goal every day on Inside Sources is to help you divide the rage from the reason, elevate the conversation, connect the dots, and make the news make sense in your world. We have conversations with great thinkers, with great leaders, and great people who are just out there making a difference in the world. Now, we do talk about politics, but only so we can discuss society and culture. And then we explore society and culture so we can discuss principles and the people in America and the state of Utah who actually live them and apply them every day. We bring the best and brightest minds to the state of Utah, and we love to take the Utah model and send it out to our nation's capital and beyond. Every day on Inside Sources, you'll be part of that conversation. To help you understand things in a different way, we'll get you to think again about what you think you know, but most important, we're going to help you have confidence to have crucial conversations in your community and in your own home.
Join Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson, 1 to 3 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, still no definitive result in Utah's 2nd District Republican primary. Celeste Malloy had a slim lead. Second, social media companies lost a decision in the U.S. Supreme Court on whether the government's need to stop the spread of misinformation about COVID violated their right to free speech. And third, the Utah Jazz have 3 picks going into the NFL draft tonight. 88 degrees, partly cloudy right now. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
We are thrilled to have joining us in studio today the official Republican nominee for Senate in the state of Utah. John Curtis joins us in the studio. Congratulations on a very big, very significant, getting over 50%, I think, in a 4-way race. Has to be high on the clearing the benchmark.
We feel good about it, and we feel very good about it. And I don't even want to go a minute further in an interview without saying thank you to all of those voters. There's so many people I have to say thank you to, but thanks for the chance to say to your audience, I sure appreciate their support.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the pivot starts to happen as you start moving and looking towards that first Tuesday in November, where the big race, the final race, will really happen. And so now you've got to both consolidate within the Republican Party, to shore up the support there, and then make the case to all of Utahns. Where do you go from here?
Well, I think that I'm up to that challenge, and it's an important challenge. And I think it's important to represent, to state right up front that I will represent all Utahns. In my current district, I have kind of a fun relationship with Moab, as an example. Moab has a lot of, I would say, very liberal people by their definition, not mine. And I like to tease them that they hate that they like me because we're very different, but I've shown up for them. And we've held town hall meetings, and I've listened to their frustrations. And I think that's very important. A representative doesn't have to totally agree with everybody. But I think it's important that they can go home and say, I feel represented.
Yeah, I think that is the ultimate thing that every voter, every citizen wants, is to say, whether I agree with this person or I like that policy or I dislike the bill they introduced, that you represent me, I think is an important message.
Yeah, and you can't do that if you don't know how they feel about issues. Here again, you don't have to agree with them. But if you're not listening to them with an open mind, and I will tell you there have been a number of times when I have been influenced, and maybe not for a 180-degree turn, but certainly nuanced in my approach. And I've learned a lot from that. I think I'm a better representative because I have listened.
Yeah, and I want to get to that point because I think it's one of the critical things that we never talk enough about in terms of the campaign, because I think campaigns are transformational for the candidate, for the campaign staffers, and often for the citizens who get engaged in that process. So let's start with you. What did you learn in this primary process?
Well, I learned I don't need as much sleep as I thought I needed. I learned how to get by on a red-eye flight. So there is that physical aspect of it. I had reinforced to me just how great this state is. And a young person came up to me last night at our party, and they said, so what's the best part of the job? And I said, it's meeting people. Yeah. And I had reinforced, and I learned just how great Utah is. I knew the 3rd district, I would say, very well. I didn't know the rest of the state as well. Washington County is a really good example. And I learned also that each county is as different from each other as a state is from another state. And so it's a mistake to say, hey, I know rural, right? Or I know southern Utah.
Yeah.
Because Washington County and Iron County, there's different Salt Lake County and Utah County. I mean, if you look at the differences, right, between those two counties. And I think the reality of it is I have to learn how to speak 29 counties' languages, right? And understand people in 29 counties because there's 29 unique entities in this state that are all incredibly important.
That's great perspective. Give us something that surprised you as you marched your way through the bruises and the battles.
I would say probably the issue that surprised me the most was water. I would say in the 3rd District, it's clearly important, and we talk about it a lot. But I learned in certain counties that if I didn't start with water, nothing else mattered. Nothing else mattered. And that's actually another really good example of how county by county, they do have different needs. There are certain counties in the state where it's water, period.
Campaigns are also made up of some very interesting moments, often transformational moments. So take us to a moment during that process and that journey where there was kind of the doubt moment. You struggled early getting to the decision to get in the race, but there are always those other moments where you have that pause or that reflection, or we actually described it last night. You're standing at the gas station. It's like 11 at night or 5 in the morning, and you're just standing there. You're staring like, what am I doing?
Well, I think if I'm honest, convention was that moment. So we went through 17 hours of talking to people, of speeches, and I was not didn't get the reception that I had hoped for. I wouldn't say that was a huge doubting moment, but it clearly was a moment of wow, didn't do as well as I thought.
Yeah, fascinating. Give us the moment where you also have those moments in the campaign where the confidence, kind of that quiet confidence, kicks in. It's like, okay, I think we're going to be all right.
So, polls were good all the way along through this, but my team's job was to be hair on fire.
Right? It is the job of the campaign.
It is the job of the campaign. So a couple of weeks ago, the polls are really good, and I'm feeling good about this, but the team, was like, whoa, but... And then finally, 24 hours before voting, a poll came in that was well published that just said, hey, you've got this. And I think that was that moment for me. Is like, maybe we really do. But I'll tell you what, until I stood there and saw the results come across on the computer last night, I wasn't sure what they were going to be.
Yeah. Talk to us about some of the moments last night. There were clearly some emotional moments, I think, as you reflected and kind of took that all in and reflected it back out to the people that were with you last night. Give us some perspective there.
Well, I have 17 grandchildren, 6 children, and we had a unique window last night where they were all there. Some of them flew in yesterday, and some of them fly out this morning. And so that window is gone.
Yeah.
And my son, who flew in from out of state for that event, made the comment of, I didn't do this when you won the congressional race, and I've always been sorry. So to be able to share that moment with those who mean the most to you was really a cool thing for me last night.
Yeah, that's special for sure. So now we pivot. We start marching our way towards the first Tuesday of November, and I want you to project past that.
Yeah.
We'll take I don't like to ask hypotheticals, but I'm going to give you a hypothetical. That the first Tuesday of November goes well. You get to January of 2025. You're sworn in as a United States Senator representing the state of Utah. If there was one thing that you could get done in your 6-year term, even if it was just one thing, but it guaranteed that you would not have a second term, what would that one thing be that would be worth all of that?
Well, I think, can I give you 3 things?
Sure. Let's start with 3.
So fixing immigration, just a broken system that Utahns are so disappointed in us for our inability to fix what's happening at the border, and then just a broken system otherwise. And if I could do that, and that meant that I couldn't come back, I'd put that on my gravestone, right?
Yeah.
So that would be 1. 2, and it's hard to say which is most important, debt. And if we could walk away in 6 years, maybe not 100% solved, but a lot solved and on the right trajectory, that would be worth it. I think I said 3, but I'm going to stop there because there's others important issues, but nothing I think is important to the country as those 2 issues.
Yeah. All right. We're rolling in next week to the 4th of July. Give us one thing that you hope we all think about. If you were to be the representative, what would you tell the people of the state?
Yeah, and thank you, particularly bringing up the 4th of July. I just want to make sure that we love our country going forward as much as we have loved it. in the past, as much as my parents taught me to love it, and as much as you and I grew up in an era where we loved it. And if that's slipping, that would just not be good. And so I hope we all remember just how good we have it. And quickly, if you'll indulge me, I get to travel to a lot of countries. Everybody wants to be us, even on our worst day. Yeah. And I just hope on this July 4th, even with our problems, we don't forget just how great it is in this country.
Representative John Curtis, newly minted Republican nominee for Senate for the great state of Utah. We'll let you go get some sleep. We'll let you exhale, and then we'll march towards November from there. Thanks so much for joining
You're
us.
awesome. Thanks, Boyd. Thank you.
We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour. Leaders of Utah's Olympic Organizing Committee made their pitch to the full International Olympic Committee board today for hosting the Winter Games in 2034.
This presentation is a result of years of work and steps that we were able to be introduced to the full IOC membership for the first time today.
Committee President Fraser Bullock says this was a very technical meeting. The next meeting set for July 24th, when the board will vote on whether or not to accept Utah's bid. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Tomorrow evening, President Biden and former President Trump square off in the first debate of the election season. Trump will be able to speak about some aspects of the hush money case as Judge Juan Merchan lifted portions of the gag order. Now, Mr. Trump wants the order to be lifted entirely, calling it all ridiculous. You can watch the CNN presidential debate tomorrow at 7 p.m. on CNN or listen to the simulcast live here on KSL News Radio. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up just a bit, the NASDAQ also up slightly today. And our KSL weather, just a little bit stormy possibly tomorrow and the next day. That's coming up. KSL News Time, 1:31.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Hi, Doug Wright here with one more little experiment you can do at home. In a pan of water, all you have to do is stir in limestone, calcium, magnesium particles, and then heat that whole mess up on the stove. And you know what, on second thought, not such a good idea, because limestone, calcium, and magnesium particles heated in water will clump and stick to your pan like concrete, which incidentally is exactly what's going on inside your water heater. Think about it, limestone, calcium, magnesium, that's what makes hard water hard. And trust me on this, if you live in northern Utah, your home has hard water. So call Connecticut of Utah. I'll give you the number in a moment. They'll test your water's hardness for free, and they'll show you the patented design features that make Connecticut water softeners work better than any other. Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. To learn more, call Connecticut. It's 801-576-8600 or log on to softwaterutah.com. And call now while it's on your mind.
The Management Minute is a service of the MBA program in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. As someone who's dyslexic and the parent of an autistic child, this topic is important to me: neurodiversity. When we talk about diversity and inclusion in the workplace, this should go high on the list. People who are autistic, dyslexic, or have ADHD or other cognitive differences often need workplace accommodations to thrive. But when they thrive, their work can be extremely creative, powerful, imaginative. They see what others cannot in a way that brings value to complex problem solving. But they also have limitations. Good leaders find ways to build competitive advantage with neurodiverse teams. Learn more about neurodiversity with an MBA degree from Utah State University. Go to utahstatemba.com. That's utahstatemba.com. I'm Scott Hammond. Hope to see you in one of our classes.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon Here's Ricky Meeks.
Right now, we have a nice drive in progress on the Valley freeways. A KSL traffic trooper reporting that there is a stalled vehicle in the left turn lane of the southbound I-15 freeway entrance at 2700 North in Plain City, causing some delays. Start your summer drive with a new auto loan from Cypress Credit Union and enjoy competitive rates and flexible terms. Visit cypresscu.com or ask for Cypress at the dealership. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, 95 for a high today. Clouds clearing up this afternoon, and there's a chance of thunderstorms. Also a chance for storms tomorrow with a high of 90. Drops to 85 on Friday. And right now, 90 degrees, partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's an interesting season that we're in. Following last week's statement from the Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, stating that social media platforms should contain a warning about their effects and potential impact on young people, particularly on their mental health. Now, Dr. Murthy is declaring that gun violence should be moved into the public health crisis issue. And we want to dig into all of these crises, and perhaps it is, as Jennifer Graham described it at Deseret.com, maybe we're in a crisis of crises. And we want to dig into these in terms of what does it really mean and where do we actually go from here. And Jennifer joins us on the line. Jennifer, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, as we dive into this one, give us first just the breakdown on this latest announcement from the Surgeon General in terms of gun violence and where we need to be there. What does it actually say? What does it actually mean?
Well, it is super interesting that you mentioned that this is kind of a follow-up to another big announcement from him a week ago about social media platforms needing warnings. And it has almost made me think that he's trying to keep up with the Supreme Court this month, that, the Supreme Court is all about a new opinion every day, and now it seems like we're getting new pronouncements from the Surgeon General every week. So I don't know. It might have something to do with the fact that it's an election year. We'll leave that to others to speculate. But anyway, it was a big deal that he issued this. Well, it was first an advisory, but it's also a pronouncement that gun violence is now a public health crisis, which, of course, enables all sorts of funding to come forward, like we remember from COVID. As soon as things get an official designation, money kind of falls out of the trees. And so skeptics may say that that has a lot to do with this. Other skeptics might say that it is also part of a political campaign. I won't weigh in on any of that. Had nothing to do with the decision here, but it was a controversial move for sure.
Yeah, no question. And there are a lot of things underneath the hood there, so to speak, in terms of what this is and why it came out now. The dollars that fall from such an order or such a pronouncement by the Surgeon General are an interesting thing to watch, especially from the lobbying perspective in our nation's capital. But help us understand in terms of what they based the decision on in terms of some of those numbers, because I want to make sure we don't lose that in either the dollars and cents of it or the politics of it, that there are some things that we should be having conversations about.
Sure. And this report that came out, it was roughly 40 pages. It is well packed with data. Most recent, a study from last year that had some pretty compelling arguments in there that this has gotten to a crisis level. And some of I can't cite all the statistics, but some of the ones that I found most compelling were that 54% of American adults last year said that they had experienced a firearm-related incident, and that means a negative incident. It doesn't mean they were out on the range having a good time. One in 5 Americans said that they had been threatened with a firearm. Almost 20% said that a family member had been killed or committed suicide via a firearm, which is really the kind of statistic that should give us pause, and we should think about whether or not as Dr. Murthy said, that we should take this issue out of the realm of politics and put it into the realm of health, because it is affecting the life expectancy of Americans, which is a big deal.
Yeah, no question about that. One of the things that you pointed out in your piece at Deseret.com was something from the Acton Institute questioning that some of the statistics that came out, one that was missing was the fact that 60% of gun deaths are by suicide, which again is a whole nother crucial conversation we have to get to.
Exactly. And that's one reason that I addressed this issue the way I did, talking about the fact that all these crises, and we can argue about whether they're actual crises or not and whether that's the term to use, but all these trends, all these very troubling trends, at minimum, we should say, they're interconnected. And I did see a lot of commentary about the suicide aspect of this, because when we talk about gun violence, I think our minds immediately go to homicides or holdups or other kinds of violent crime, whereas more than half, nearly 60% of the deaths that he is talking about in this report are suicide. And those, of course, as Anthony Bradley wrote in his tweet, we need to talk about mental health as well. Yeah. So there's just no way to talk about one without talking about the other.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I wish the Surgeon General had done a little bit better is to link those two in terms of let's have this conversation. Let's take it out of the politics. And I do worry that if we call everything a crisis, if everything is a 10, nothing's a 10. On the importance scale. And sometimes I worry that we use these political terms that are nice bumper sticker slogans or nice headlines, but often keep us a safe distance from connecting the dots and having the real conversation.
I totally agree with you on that. And that's one of the things I was thinking about yesterday is the number of things that we attach the word crisis to, right? I mean, we have a housing crisis, we have a child care crisis, we have a climate crisis, we have an immigration crisis, and so forth. I mean, you can just go on down the line. And at some point, it does seem that we're overusing the word. But, in this case, I think the argument for using the word crisis does involve when something is a clear and present danger to the lives of large populations. And I could argue both ways. I can argue both ways on a lot of things. That's why I'm a generalist and journalist. So, I mean, I definitely understand the point of view of people who say that this isn't a crisis and that the Surgeon General should not be weighing in on this, particularly since he has been aligned with a certain political party in the past. But where I came down on it was, frankly, the number of health care professionals who yesterday spoke out about this. There does seem to be a unanimous position on behalf of all the major health organizations in the country who are applauding this. And as I mentioned towards the end of the piece, they have kind of gathered around this hashtag, "This is our lane." In the past, they have been told to stay out of gun conversations. And what healthcare professionals are saying is we are the ones who see the effects. We are the ones who are treating the people. And so this is our lane. This is something that we should have something to say on. And that is a reasonable argument that you could make not only for healthcare professionals as a field, but for the Surgeon General.
Yeah, no question. And it is always interesting in terms of what the Surgeon General does. And then, of course, the funds that do fall, that is one component. But in terms of anything else with real teeth, there's not a lot there in terms of enforcement or policy that can be done. But again, I think part of it is leading these conversations. And one of the things that you did in your piece, and something you always do so brilliantly, Jennifer, is connecting the dots. And I love that you took some of these maybe overuse of the word crises, but you did start connecting those dots between gun violence, loneliness, social media use, and pornography. Some really interesting things that all seem to have some common intersections.
Yes, that is correct. And I will say I'm the first person to be skeptical of saying let's just throw money at a problem. And my eyebrows are always raised to the ceiling when anybody in government starts telling me we need more studies. But one thing that did stand out in this report to me yesterday that I found kind of interesting was they said that gun violence deaths are roughly the same number of deaths of people who die from sepsis each year, which of course is blood poisoning. Whereas, according to the Surgeon General, this is not my own research, but according to him, the research that is done on gun deaths is less than 1% of the research that is done each year on sepsis. Well, assuming that is true, that is something that thoughtful people should take into consideration. And obviously, as you said, there's a lot here to chew on, and his pronouncement is not the end of this conversation, but the beginning of it.
Yeah, it really should be the beginning of a host of conversations. And the important thing is for us to get past the politics and the positioning of some of these things, especially during an election year, but really get to the conversation we need to have that will lead to good policy and lead to the outcomes that everybody can unite around, because that's really the name of the game in the end. Jennifer Graham, Ideas and Culture Editor for the Deseret News. You can check it out, her piece at Deseret.com. Always great writing, great thinking. Jennifer, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm a fan of yours.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. That's Jennifer Graham again from Deseret.com. Always helps us get beyond the headline, underneath the numbers, the positioning, the posturing, and then where's the real conversation and how do we get there? That's always the test. We'll step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio has you covered, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio. Or listen on the KSL News Radio Listen app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio. We have you covered.
With almost 9,000 reviews on Google and countless before and after pictures and videos, SodaWeightLoss.com has helped people turn their lives around, get off the medications, and stay healthy for the rest of their life. Like Nick, who let go of 42 pounds in 5 weeks.
Before this, I was pre-diabetic. I had high cholesterol and acid reflux. And when I went to the doctor last week, I had none of those things. She took me off all of my medicines.
It's been almost a year since my doctor told me I was type 2 diabetic, which was a real sobering moment. But as it turns out, the wake-up call I'd been needing. He put me on medication, but said it was still early enough to be reversed if I made some life changes. With the help and encouragement of Soda's amazing nutritionists and dietitians, I let go of 70 pounds in 5 months. Now I finally like how I look, but more importantly, I'm no longer diabetic, and even my sleep apnea has dramatically improved. Don't wait anymore. Go to SodaWeightLoss.com to get started. SOTA weightloss.com. Soda stands for, say it with me, state of the art.
The IRS deadline has come and gone. So do you owe money to the IRS? If so, you need an ally. Whether you owe the IRS $6,000 or $600,000, whether your tax problems are personal or business, the professionals at Allies Tax Relief are ready to step in and negotiate your fresh start with the IRS. Here's a happy customer of Allies Tax Relief.
Before calling Allies Tax Relief, I feared the IRS would take all of my assets. I owed them over $562,000. Thankfully, I was referred to Allies and called them for help. They ultimately saved my life from uncertainty. Allies negotiated my giant tax debt to an unbelievable $1,500. They are professionals and they fight the fight for their clients.
Allies Tax Relief will protect your assets from being seized and your paycheck from being garnished. Call right now for your free consultation. 800-296-0772. That's 800-296-0772. Or visit AlliesTaxRelief.com.
Is joint pain, soreness, and achiness getting in the way of your best life? Football legend Emmitt Smith refuses to back down to pain. That's why he's a huge advocate for QC Kinetics and their natural approach to getting you relief.
Look, we get one trip around, so I wouldn't ever let pain stop me from hanging out with my race team, traveling with my family, or golfing with my friends.
Emmitt's got it right. And QC Kinetics uses regenerative medicine to relieve that never-ending pain in your knees, hips, shoulders, and back. And the best news, there's nothing foreign being introduced into your body. Just your own body's natural healing properties. No surgery or no downtime.
If pain's holding you back, maybe it's tennis, pickleball, running, hiking, or spending time with special people in your life, what are you waiting for? This is precious time. Get out there and get over to QC Kinetics.
Call QC Kinetics 385-766-1987. That's 385-766-1987. 385-766-1987.
Cedar City Bryan Head is full of things you love, from the Shakespeare Festival to cozy cabins, stargazing, and more. Get to know you and Utah. Plan today at visitcedarcity.com.
Tim and Amanda.
One of the things I love about radio is that we are all hearing it at the same time. One of the differences between that and just scrolling on your phone is that I don't know when that story was posted. Maybe an hour ago, maybe 3 days ago.
To your point about who wrote it, where did it come from, and is it dated information, our hope every day is that we can provide a more broad spectrum of information on a single topic that you can then take and make decisions on your own.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Utah's Olympic organizers made their pitch for the 2034 Games to the International Olympic Committee today. A decision expected July 24th. Second, former President Trump will have a little more freedom to talk about the hush money case in tomorrow's CNN presidential debate. And police in Logan say they've solved a 60-year-old cold case. 90 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and as we march our way towards that first Tuesday of November, the presidential race continues to heat up, of course, including the big CNN presidential debate tomorrow. You can hear the simulcast of that here on KSL News Radio. And there's always some interesting things under the hood. Again, things that aren't always in the middle of the headline. Everyone's talking about the debate tomorrow and who will be talking about immigration and border security, international things, tax policy, the inflation, the economy, but some really interesting things under the hood. And a great piece in the Washington Post. Maxine Joselo, a staff writer for the Washington Post, did a fantastic piece on how President Biden's promise to coal country became a warning for Democrats. And Maxine joins us on the line. Maxine, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I love the fact that you went out to coal country. This has been a place that has historically been a Democratic stronghold, a lot of union jobs there over the last decades. And now things are shifting a bit. Give us a little bit of the lay of the land first, and then we'll talk about the conversations that the Biden administration is having.
That's right. So I recently traveled to Indiana County, Pennsylvania. It's in southwestern PA, and it's historically a region that has trended toward Democrats several decades ago because of the union workers at area coal mines. But starting in the 1980s, those mines all started to close down, and in the last couple of elections, Donald Trump won that county by 66% and 68% respectively, so it's trended more toward Republicans.
And so as you look at that trend, of course, that's obviously alarming in a very tight election, and we look at kind of the swing state map, and Pennsylvania, Ohio, those are always places that are going to be close and tight, and where this kind of movement could really impact who ends up behind the desk there in the Oval Office. And so as you were there on the road, as you were there in some of these meetings, just paint for our listeners a little bit of what you heard and what you sensed and how you sensed that the Biden folks responded.
Sure. So the part of the reason I went to Indiana County, of all places, was the Biden administration sent officials there too, and I went to a meeting with them and local residents, and the meeting was hosted by what's called the Interagency Working Group on Coal and Power Plant Communities, the group that Biden established soon after taking office, essentially to focus on coal country and help connect coal country with federal funding. And members of this working group came to Indiana County with an upbeat message. They said, we're here to help you. We know that the nation is moving away from coal and it's really hitting your area hard, and we're here to help. We want to help you get federal funding and federal support. That was the positive message. The response was less positive. I, in my reporting, encountered and heard a lot of frustration at that meeting. There were people in the audience who stood up and said, you know, historically, you haven't been here to help. Historically, we have been forgotten about, and the largest coal plant in Pennsylvania shut down last year, and it caused a lot of jobs and tax base and economic development opportunities to go away. And so frustration is a lot of what I heard while I was there.
Yeah, you also noted in your reporting that obviously the Trump administration, the Trump campaign, has been quick to jump on some of those things and saying, hey, we're going to fire that back up. We're going to remove some of the regulatory hurdles that prevent them from running, compared and contrasted with what China is doing. Give us a sense of how that played and how was that received?
Absolutely, and I think it's important to make pretty clear that in no way did the Trump administration save the coal industry either. There's a lot of frustration with, his promises not being delivered on when he was on the campaign trail promising to end Obama's alleged war on coal. A lot of people in coal country thought, finally someone's here to save us, and that just didn't happen. The U.S. has continued to move away from coal, including during the Trump administration. A number of coal plants, major coal plants, continued to close, and U.S. coal output continued to fall pretty substantially. And so when I was talking to residents of Indiana County, there were some people there who said they're planning to vote for Trump. They said that they were optimistic that he could help the coal industry. But again, it's hard to argue with the economic reality that coal is struggling to compete economically with cheaper natural gas and renewable energy, regardless of what Trump tried to do in his first term and what he might try to do in a possible second term.
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting just reading through your piece, how both the current president and the former president are not being received warmly in these places because the promises from the campaign trail didn't turn out to be the deliverables when they were in office. And so as you look at the go forward, in knowing that places like this really will be pivotal in terms of determining who wins the election, any other nuances or things underneath the headlines that you took away from your trip there?
Yeah, well, I would say to your point just now about how places like this will be critical for the election, I think Pennsylvania really is a state to watch because all of the other top coal-producing states in the United States are deep red states. They're not swing states. And Pennsylvania really is the exception. Trump won it in 2016. Biden won it in 2020. It really does come down to a small number of votes. There are about 40,000 people voting in Indiana County, which is not a huge amount in the grand scheme of things, but it could be a small number of what we're calling them at the Washington Post is deciders who ultimately shape this election. And so it's important to talk to people in these places and hear what they have to say about both candidates.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Maxine Joselo, staff writer of the Washington Post. You can check out her piece at thewashingtonpost.com. Great perspective in an important area. We often overlook some of these rural places, coal country in particular, and here's one inside of Pennsylvania that I think will be part of those deciders of deciders when it comes to it on that first Tuesday in November. Maxine, thanks so much for joining us. Great piece. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
All right, that's Maxine Joselo, staff writer at the Washington Post. And I think it's so interesting to look at some of these places. In the grand scheme of things, yeah, it's not a ton of votes. You're looking at about 40,000 votes, the way Maxine described it there in Indianapolis County in Pennsylvania. And again, that's not a big number, but in a race that will be so tight and where Pennsylvania will really matter, this is a group that is going to make a difference. So you can see that the administration is trying to get some leverage there. Of course, the Trump campaign is trying to do the same thing. And I would bet dollars to donuts that we're going to hear about coal country and energy when we get to the CNN presidential debate tomorrow night. It will definitely be one of those topics, and I think a lot of folks are going to tune into that to say, okay, what does each candidate have to say when it comes to energy, and will we really make that transition? And I thought it was interesting the way the citizens of this county, again, coal country in Indiana County, looking at that transition, they don't feel like it is a transition. They feel like they're kind of being left behind and ignored a little bit in terms of where do they go next. and what does it mean for their jobs, for their families, for their tax base, for their communities. And there's going to be some questions, I'm sure, around this, both from a climate standpoint, really important, also an economic standpoint in terms of how that plays out, and cost. Anyone driving around in an electric car is pretty much being powered by coal. It's still driving a lot of the electricity in this country, and I think that's an interesting thing to look at. And, of course, that impacts us right here in the state of Utah as well when it comes to coal production. And how do we do it cleaner and greener? That's an important conversation to have. How do we make sure that those in coal country make sure that they're part of the solution and part of the go-forward path? Those will all be topics that we'll get to on the CNN presidential debate tomorrow night. Well, that wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news, but more Inside Sources coming up next, so stick with us. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Current State Senator Mike Kennedy projected to win the vacant U.S. House seat left by Congressman John Curtis. He's the only candidate in a statewide leadership or congressional race expected to win the primary after also winning at this year's Republican convention. Hinckley Institute of Politics Director Jason Perry says what we're seeing in this election has been happening for a few years.
Make it more convenient for people to come to those caucuses, organize it in such a way that it's an experience where you leave wanting to be more engaged.
Perry says he thinks we need to reduce the barriers that some party members face if they want to become delegates to the state convention. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Robert Cremo refused to change his plea to guilty when he appeared in court today in Illinois. He's accused of killing 7 people at the 4th of July parade in Highland Park 2 years ago. Dozens of people were injured there. A trial in the case now set for February of next year. Your money at this moment, uptick in the Dow today and a little stronger gain, 87 points for the NASDAQ. And coming up, it's possible we'll see some thunderstorms today or tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
The Salt Lake Chamber is Utah's voice for business. Okay, that sounds great, but what does it really mean? Well, as Utah's largest and longest-standing business association, they support and champion community prosperity throughout the state. And if you're in business, well, that's a very good thing for you. Be sure to listen to the Chamber's Speaking on Business, weekdays at 7:20, 11:55, and 5:20 p.m. on KSL News Radio.
We have some exciting news to announce.
Master Electrical Service has joined Mountain Home Services.
And I can speak from experience, Deb. Mountain Home Services installed my furnace years ago, and it's been amazing.
And we know Master Electrical Service has been your trusted source for all your electrical needs, like your EV chargers, your generators, and recessed lighting.
But now that they've joined Mountain Home Services, they can help you with your HVAC, your heating and air, as well as your plumbing.
And it comes with that upfront pricing guarantee. I love the upfront pricing guarantee because it means no hidden fees.
100% satisfaction guarantee as well.
Master Electrical Service has been the name you trust since 1954.
They're the company we trust, and so can you.
Check them out now at mountainhomeutah.com.
That's mountainhomeutah.com, or give them a call at 801-543-2222. So easy to remember, 801-543-2222.
With Progressive Snapshot, you could save on auto insurance rates by driving safely, which is great because you're rarely rewarded for just being you. Ever get rewarded for being left-handed? No. You get to use weird scissors. Your reward for being a Capricorn? Cold birthdays that conflict with the holidays. And your reward for quickly responding to every work email? More emails. But with Snapshot, even left-handed Capricorns with proper email etiquette could get rewarded for good driving. So download the Progressive app today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Snapshot not available in all states or from all agents.
What's wrong?
My travel rewards card didn't earn enough miles for my vacation.
Are you crying? Are you crying because of that other credit card?
Uh-huh.
Well, switch to the Capital One Venture card. Venture lets you redeem miles on any travel purchase.
Really?
Yep, and you earn unlimited double miles on every purchase every single day. The Capital One Venture card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meeks.
Right now, we have good speeds and no problems on all the Valley freeways, including I-15 north and southbound between Ogden and Provo. We have had some heavy and slow traffic on State Street in spots going northbound especially, and that's between 114th and 90th South. Attention Wasatch Front businesses and property managers. Have winter conditions damaged your parking lot asphalt or concrete surfaces? Call GoPave Utah to get on their schedule. GoPaveUtah.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Look for a high today around 95, and the clouds will clear up this afternoon, but there's still a chance of thunderstorms. Also a chance of storms tomorrow with a high of 90, drops to 85 on Friday. 89 degrees and partly cloudy right now. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Of course, tomorrow will be the first debate of the season. CNN's presidential debate will air tomorrow. You can hear the simulcast here on KSL News Radio. And as most of you know, I have a lot of thoughts about debates, how they should be done, and how we should actually listen to them. And as our nation goes into another crucial presidential cycle, and as we look at all the division and the partisan bitterness, and the fact that most people are thinking about what are the zingers that are going to be launched during the course of the debate tomorrow, we want to stop for a moment and think again about what we think we know about our responsibility in terms of how we listen to the debate. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, we're always trying to think again about what we think we know. And I saw something yesterday, and the moment I dove into it, I thought, we've got to have this conversation. This is a different way to listen to a debate. And remember, how we listen to the debate is every bit as important as what gets said at the debate. A brilliant piece, How to Watch the Presidential Debate as a Civic Pluralist. That's an interesting thing to think about, and we're going to dive into it with Adam Phillips. Adam is the Chief Strategy Officer and Chief of Staff at Interfaith America, an extraordinary organization. We're big fans here on the program. And Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be on Inside Sources.
Yeah, well, let's dive into this. I love the piece. It got me thinking, got me curious, and so I want to start with your backstory in terms of coming up with this idea of, hey, let's listen to this debate as civic pluralists. Give us a definition.
Right. It's a unique way to think about this upcoming debate, but I think it's an important way to think about the debate, especially in this very divisive election season, where there's just a lot of dissatisfaction and frustration. But when we think about those that are tuning in tomorrow, maybe they're even undecided voters. We imagine they're looking for some substance rather than just posturing or sort of the quintessential partisan rancor. And at Interfaith America, we're the nation's largest interfaith organization. We pursue the principles of civic pluralism as the answers to our nation's divisions, truly in the hope of co-creating a more perfect union. We think diversity is a treasure. We think that faith is a bridge. We all, come at these questions from our own perspectives, our own ways of thinking through how we vote, how we might worship, how we might pray, how we just live our lives in the public square. And so that's how we're thinking about this debate, how to think through maybe 5 questions to consider even as a civic pluralist.
Yeah, let's dive into those, because I think this is brilliant, and this is why we turn to Interfaith America, because this is a different way to look at it. And so let's go through some of the themes that you laid out in terms of things we could be listening for as we listen to the answers. Again, not just the zingers, not just the punching bag stuff, but the things that could actually give us a better indication of who can lead, who can unite, who can help take that diversity, both in terms of the pluralism of the civics and also the faith, to be a bridge to a better future.
Yeah, I mean, no matter who's running the country, who's leading the country, whether it's re-electing President Biden or another election of President Trump or any presidential candidate, they've got to think through this in terms of the bedrock fundamental principles of what it looks like to lead an American democracy, and civic pluralism is a marker of that. It's a hallmark of our nearly 250-year tradition as a multi-ethnic democracy here in the United States. So, becoming a civic pluralist is truly about who we are as Americans, and it's not about abandoning political convictions or involvement. It's about embracing our values and beliefs without compromising them. So we all, whether you're a supporter of one way or the other, we are inviting people to think through 5 themes around the debate tomorrow, and truly in the election season that's, I think, kicking off in earnest this summer. One of the themes questions we're asking folks to consider is around identity. Is identity discussed as a source of pride or exploitation? So during the debate, do the candidates genuinely acknowledge and celebrate the diversity of identities in America, or do they exploit them as political tools? Pluralists don't exploit. They emphasize the importance of respecting and valuing our identities. Yeah. Another question we're asking people to think through is faith referred to as a bridge or a divide? At Interfaith America, we're committed to this kind of bedrock principle that faith is a bridge. And so we're asking folks to pay attention to how candidates discuss religious traditions and their impact on public life. Yeah. And another third question is, are our nation's institutions built up or demeaned? Institutions keep this country running in so many ways in our public life. And so we're asking folks to consider how candidates discuss the strength and integrity of democratic institutions, such as the judiciary, Congress, the electoral process, these things that we sometimes take for granted that come up every 4 years, knowing that democracy is built on the strength of our institutions 365 days a year.
Yeah. Let me pause. Yeah. I want you to pause there for a second, because I want to unpack a couple of these before we get to the final 2.
Okay, sure.
Because I think these are so interconnected, and I think this whole idea of identity and faith and seeing that as a dimension of diversity, helping people bring their whole authentic self into the public square from both faith tradition, from background, from lived experience, all of those things, that oneness is not sameness in the country, and it's part of what makes us incredibly strong. And then the trust in the institutions, I think, is so vital. I think it's one of the things I worry most about in our constitutional republic is when we've lost trust in a lot of the politicians and the leaders, which then starts to bleed over into the loss of trust in the institutions, whether that's the courts or Congress, but even other institutions, whether it's religious institutions or organizations, businesses in the community. But ultimately, we start losing trust in one another. And I think how candidates talk about that really matters, whether they're just undermining that trust in the institution with kind of a grievance mentality, as opposed to how do we strengthen them and move them all forward. And so let's look at those last 2 areas that you're hoping that people will listen to, and some framework for that.
Yeah, and I think these are some of the most important things to think about tomorrow. And that's the idea around cooperation. We might vote a certain way come November 5th, and we want to encourage people to get out and vote. We see our democracy and our electoral process as something almost sacred. not in the religious sense, but in the sense of these sacred values as Americans that we've fought for and defended and promoted for nearly 250 years. So is cooperation emphasized over division? At the end of the day, we've got to come back together and be bridge builders. We, of course, want to have a robust policy debate about the future of the country around some really core, important issues. But at the end of the day, how can we cooperate? And so we're asking folks to think and look to see, how do candidates tomorrow night on CNN emphasize that? Are they emphasizing cooperation or are they emphasizing division? And then finally, this idea that I've been talking about around diversity. Is diversity described as a treasure or is it described as a threat? And a civic pluralist perspective views diversity really as a source of strength and innovation that enriches society and promotes understanding among different groups. So pay attention to how the candidates tomorrow night portray the changing demographics in the country and what opportunities it brings.
This is fantastic stuff. Adam Phillips is the Chief Strategy Officer and Chief of Staff at Interfaith America. And again, I'm sure you didn't get up this morning saying, I wonder how I can be a civic pluralist as I watch the presidential debate tomorrow. But we all should be thinking about it because it is that civic pluralist approach, I think, that can actually transcend a lot of the divisions that we have and actually lead us towards that more perfect union. Adam, thanks so much for joining us today. Fantastic stuff. We look forward to having you back to continue the conversation.
Thank you.
All right, that's Adam Phillips from Interfaith America. They're a great group, and this is a great piece. Again, the piece is How to Watch the Presidential Debate as a Civic Pluralist. 5 questions to consider. We bolted through those real quick. Identity, faith, institutions, cooperation, and diversity. How do the candidates talk about those things? We'll come back to this as we round out the show coming up at 2:50 today. But important conversations so that as we watch that CNN presidential debate tomorrow, simulcast here on KSL News Radio, you can listen differently, which will lead us to some different insight and hopefully a better result. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. In a state where the heat can be really hot,
at or near 100 degrees,
how will you stay cool?
Probably in the pool again.
I drive with all my windows down.
Drink lots of water.
June Heat Wave, the sequel, playing this week at an outside near you. Rated G for genuinely hot.
Utah, don't spend your summers painting year after year. Do what your neighbor Judy did. She called Rhino Shield.
After having the house painted with kind of usual house paint, I was seeing cracks appearing about every 3 years and just wasn't very satisfied with that.
Rhino Shield ceramic technology is formulated for our unique climate here in Utah and is Class 1 fire rated.
I can't speak highly enough about the Rhino Shield crew. They also were great at working with me to get the exact right color because I was very particular.
Utah, you too can have the 25-year guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield for 10% off the regular price.
I would not hesitate to call Rhino Shield, and I am just thrilled to recommend Rhino Shield to my friends and neighbors and family.
This offer is limited. Call 435-246-4466, 435-246-4466, or rhinoshieldwest.com.
Go Rhino Shield.
A fiduciary has the regulatory obligation to put your best interest first. Trajan Wealth is a financial fiduciary for your investments. With Trajan Wealth, the more you make, the more we make. Our interests are aligned. Most other financial advisors are brokers held to a lesser standard and are paid an upfront commission to sell you something. Call Trajan Wealth 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Put your phone on D&D. That means that do not disturb when you're driving. And when you're going from point A to B, I need you to stay safe, please, so always sing with me. So put your phone on D&D. That means that do not disturb when you're driving. And when you're going from point A to B, I need you to stay safe, please, so always remember this beat.
Don't drive distracted. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
The light is fading, your hands are sore, and the last tool has been put away. Now is the time to feel the satisfaction that comes with a job well done. But when you get your tools from Harbor Freight, something about the job feels a little different. Your wallet. Because we believe that everyone deserves hardworking tools at hardworking prices. And that's what we have here. So, whatever you do, do it for less at Harbor Freight.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, one political observer in Utah says making it easier to become a convention delegate could help to ease the tension between the caucus system and petition gathering for nominating candidates. Second, the man accused of killing 7 people at a 4th of July parade 2 years ago changed his mind about pleading guilty. Now the case will go to trial. And third, there was a quick preview of an Idaho abortion case on the Supreme Court website, but it was apparently unintentional. 89 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and as we're always trying to look for the real solutions, not the fake fights and not the false choices, but how do we actually get to the real component of things that are actually compatible? So sometimes we look at things in terms of the environment or construction or mining, and how do we balance those legitimate environmental concerns so we can be careful stewards of the environment and make sure that we do the things that need to be done for the citizens of the country? There's always interesting balance points in all of that, and far too often we get served up the fake fight and the false choice. And so we want to dig into that with someone who has been going at this, especially as it relates to environmental litigation. Now, there is a role to be played. Let's be really clear. And this is an and conversation. And there are things that increase costs, create delays, even on things that are supposed to be for better, greener, cleaner energy. Robert Poole is an MIT-trained engineer. He's co-founder and director of transportation policy at Reason Foundation. He's advised numerous federal and state transportation agency, author of Rethinking America's Highways, and the Reason Foundation's 2024 study, Reforming Environmental Litigation. And he joins us on the line. Robert, welcome to the show.
Hi, Boyd. I'm glad to be with you today.
All right. So let's dive into this. It's always one of those challenges, even some things that get some cheers of, oh, great, we passed a bill to, do more windmills or to do green energy. And then suddenly we're years and sometimes decades down the line with lawsuits and litigation. Give us kind of the baseline. What is this doing and what is the impact to begin with?
Sure. The impact is that major infrastructure, including good environmental things like high voltage transmission lines, cost 2 or 3 times as much in this country as they do in much of Europe. And that is really because I think there's a consensus starting to build that we've really gone overboard with the environmental approval process. It's not so much the law, which was passed. It was about 5 pages long and when it passed in 1970, the National Environmental Policy Act. But part of the thing that it's just grown into a huge bureaucracy. The courts have put in all sorts of things that were not in the law, and that particularly enables, once the comprehensive environmental impact statement for a big project is finished, then it can go through years of litigation, lawsuits by anybody who can come up with an objection, And the courts have really sanctioned all this and created what I consider a real tragedy, because much-needed projects for transportation and for energy and the environment should be built on a timely basis, and for the most part, they aren't.
Yeah, I always remember then President Barack Obama talking about shovel-ready projects, and
Yes.
we all suddenly learned that shovel-ready was like it'll be ready in like 7 years.
Yes, and the numbers. I quote in my study that just came out today, actually. Stanford, two legal scholars at Stanford University did a big study of projects that had gone through environmental impact statements, and then were opened up as things go to litigation. And this sometimes meant it was 7 to 10 years before the project finally would get approved, and about 20% of them ended up being canceled because it was the cost got so high by the time you get near the end of litigation that they said this is just not worth doing.
Yeah.
And that's a tragedy, because we have a worse problem than most of Europe on this.
Yeah, that's such an important point. So walk us through what's the right way to go about this in terms of keeping that balance? How do we be careful stewards of the environment and all of those things, and make sure we're getting the infrastructure and the kinds of projects that will help it all be better?
Yeah. Well, first, the environmental impact statement process itself has gotten too big and too cumbersome. Congress has actually, in the last few years, passed some modest reforms to limit the page numbers in these documents, provide some time limits for how long it takes when you start, when the agency in federal government gets finished. But they have not. Nobody in Congress has addressed the litigation problem, and I think that's where we really need to focus some attention. And I started writing this study about a year ago after reading several articles in places like the New York Times and the Atlantic Monthly magazine by good centrist, good government liberals saying this is out of control. It's gone too far. Now, if they're saying this is not just a conservative or just a business cause, this is something that lots of thoughtful people have observed and said we really need to start redoing the way litigation is carried out. And so I looked into how environmental approvals are happening in Europe and Australia and New Zealand. Hardly anybody allows this kind of litigation. The UK, England does, and they have terrible problems getting anything built. And they have huge cost overruns. But, for example, in Italy, the environmental study gets done with public participation then at the early stages. Once it's approved, it's approved. There apparently is no litigation of the kind that we are plagued with in the United States, in Italy, and that's not true in every European country, but it's true. It's more true there than it is here. That litigation problem is nowhere near what it is in most of Europe, Australia, or New Zealand. So I think that's encouraging to say that we can learn from our counterparts, modern Western countries that are doing a better job on this than we are, and whose big projects cost often half as much as, this is big subways in Europe. In the countries that have sensible environmental reviews, they cost a half or a third as much per mile to build. And there's a lot to be learned from that.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Any other best practices or things that really jump out from your studies of some of those countries that seem to be doing it well?
Well, one is that a number of countries, including Australia and New Zealand, have an exemption from the most strict environmental review complicated process for projects that are deemed to be in the national interest. Now, that can be a slippery slope. But there are clear-cut cases of things that, for example, when the bridge in Baltimore is wiped out and needs to be replaced, but that might be considered an exception, in the national interest to not go through 7 or 10 years of study and litigation and do a streamlined process of some sort. But we present in the study a menu of options for reforming litigation. These could be as simple as limiting the time period after environmental impact statement is done under which litigation can be started, limiting what kinds of claims could be brought, and who would have standing to actually bring such claims. It's now pretty open to practically anybody who objects to something. So there are things like that could be done that I think we could get bipartisan agreement on in the next year's new Congress. There's others, for example, the idea of being able to litigate didn't come about until it was done by an executive order from, I believe it was President Carter. And that's a long time ago. And so the courts took that and said, all right, well, that's now the standard practice. But that, executive orders could be rescinded.
Yeah.
It's a discretion of the president to issue one or to issue a new one that wipes out an old one.
That's right.
That would be, I don't think we can see that very soon.
Yeah.
But I think at some point that might be the best answer to this, is just to say, look, we should follow the process more like Italy and get the public input during the environmental impact study and take that into account, balance the trade-offs between, national or regional benefits versus some local harms. You take care of the local harms with provisions in, the environmental study.
Yeah.
And you don't litigate for years afterwards.
Exactly. Great points. This is such an important part of the process. Robert Poole, great piece, part of the Transportation Policy at Reason Foundation. He's the co-founder and director, and really some great insight. Robert, thanks so much for joining us today.
Very glad to be here, Boyd.
All right, that's Robert Poole, and those are crucial conversations to get to. Even projects that are good, that everybody agrees on, can't get done because of some of the process. They become so expensive, takes so long. We got to do that better, and I think Robert's onto something in terms of how we can actually get it done. We'll step aside for bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour: losing at the state Republican convention didn't matter for Representative John Curtis. He won his race for the U.S. Senate nomination in yesterday's primary.
I make that I have a lot of work to do with the delegates. And I listen, if there's delegates listening this morning, I want them to know I'm not giving up.
Curtis tells David Dujanovic he works hard to gain the trust of everyone, including those delegates that he represents. Police in Logan say they've solved a 60-year-old cold case after DNA technology led to a break in the investigation. 17-year-old Tanya K. Weber was found strangled to death within just a few blocks of her home in Logan in 1965. Logan police reopened her case 2 years ago, sent some evidence to the state crime lab. That led them to a neighbor, Owen Kimball, who actually died by suicide 4 days after Weber's murder. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, but just by 15 points. The NASDAQ was up 87. And our KSL weather, there is a chance of a storm either today or tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
When you're getting a new roof installed, you don't want to wonder, when are they going to be done? Or even worse, what are they doing up there? You'll never have to ask when you hire IWC Roofing, because their team of certified installers will be texting you pictures from the roof. You're going to know exactly what's going on and what you're getting for your money. And on most homes, they'll do the entire job in one day. In, out, cleaned up, and they'll even power wash your driveway just to say thank you. Now, you think you'd pay a premium for this level of service, but IWC does so many roofs. They get the material for less, and they pass the savings on to you. IWC is an Owens Corning certified platinum contractor. Of course, financing is available. Even better, their summer special, up to $2,000 off your quote. But you have to make the call. $2,000 off right now. Call IWC Roofing, 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690. Or go to IWCRoofingUtah.com.
My wife and I always loved doing everything together. Jiu-jitsu, kayaking, and intimacy was always on point. It was around my early 30s when I noticed a downward trend. Watching a lot of TV, putting on weight, and just full of self-doubt. I had tried another men's clinic with disappointing results. It's the personalized treatment I receive at Revive Men's Health that has been the complete game changer for me. I've got my energy and motivation back. I'm feeling stronger than I did in my 20s, and it made me a much better husband to my wife.
I'm Eric Ramos, healthcare provider at Revive Men's Health. If you're always feeling tired or moody, have a difficult time sleeping, or decreased libido, you may be suffering from low testosterone.
Book your free T-check and exam at Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit revivemenshealth.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We do have a couple of problems on I-81. Is a vehicle fire. No flames or smoke. It is out of traffic eastbound I-80 at 40th West on the right shoulder. Then on the westbound side of I-80, a crash on the off-ramp at 5600 West. Fill up your bucket list in Box Elder County. History, recreation, and wildlife, and excellent dining and shopping await you. Learn more at visitboxeldercounty.com. Sponsored by the Utah Office of Tourism. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Looking for a high of 95 today. The clouds clear up this afternoon, but there's a chance of thunderstorms and also a chance for storms tomorrow with a high of 90. Drops to 85 on Friday. And right now, 93 degrees, partly cloudy skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Another exciting announcement coming out of Utah Valley University this week, particularly out of the Center for Constitutional Studies, as they announced the launching of a master's program in constitutional government, civics, and law. Dr. Troy E. Smith will be the program director for the Masters of Arts of Constitutional Government, Civics, and Law, and joins us on the line. And Dr. Smith, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Boyd. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is a really exciting development. The things that have been going on inside the Center for Constitutional Studies there at Utah Valley University we always talk about institutions that punch above their weight. This clearly is one. But give us a sense of this new master's program and what it means both to the university and to the students that'll be part of it.
Yes, Utah Valley University and the Center for Constitutional Studies is doing incredible work increasing constitutional literacy around Utah, the West, and in the nation. And it's a real honor for me to be a part of this program that they have put together. It's a master's degree program designed for K through 12 teachers particularly, but others who want to go on and be professionals, to go deep in the content of the American founding principles. So that is the history, the philosophy, the laws that shaped the thinkers behind the Constitution and our system of government, and how those ideas and laws have developed over time. And then also the importance of the public having the civic virtues that are essential for civic liberty and ordered liberty and our system of government that we have.
I want to unpack a few of those. Let's start with just the principles and why those are so important, especially as we look at a country that politically is quite polarized. But yet I think we're not so much divided, maybe a little more separated. But talk to us about those principles.
Right. Yeah. So there are a lot of people who want to change our system of government. 66% say that we should change our form of government. But it's not the Constitution that's failed. It's we who have stopped using the Constitution to address the very problems that the founders constructed the Constitution to resolve. 70% of the American public can't pass a basic civics test. Many of them don't know that there are three branches of government. So how can we use the Constitution if we don't fully understand it? And that's the point of this program, is to help teachers to understand these basic principles of our government, and then to be able to share that with their students and spread the understanding out so that it ripples across our communities and makes a difference in how we approach and think about government.
So it's such an important part of that process. And to me, one of the other really exciting components to all of this, of course, the relationship that has been developed with the University of Oxford's Pembroke College and the Quill Project. For our listeners who may not be as familiar, describe that project, the Quill Project, for us, and then how this will be incorporated in terms of this new master's program.
So the Quill Project is a analytical study of the convention that created the Constitution. And from that, they're able to draw all sorts of insights and connections that previously weren't available. The master's program includes a research track where students will be going to Oxford and working with Professor Nicholas Cole, who put that together, and developing those connections, finding deeper insights to help us better understand the founding and what the thinking was, the reasoning, and the connections behind that.
It's such an important project, and I love the tag teaming there. I think there's so many things that are coming out of that. As you get this launched and rolling, give us, I know you're not long on the job here, but give us a little bit of your vision in terms of how this continues to grow and expand and how it adds to that constitutional studies there at Utah Valley University.
Well, it's evident that there is a very deep need for this type of an educational program that teaches teachers the content of the founding of the principles of the Constitution so that they're able to share it with others. And we see a great demand from teachers for this. The ones that have come the 3 days that we've been going, they're expressing how much this is going to help them, and they're going to be able to bring it into the classroom and share it with their students. We anticipate that we will have a significant growth, not just here in Utah, but across the West and also across the United States, because we're one of the few programs that is actually targeted for that group and giving them the tools and knowledge to bring to their classrooms the content that they want to share.
So important. And finally, I would be very remiss, and I'd kick myself because we're one of the few radio programs in the world that spends time every week and most every day talking about federalism. We have been tasked to make federalism cool again, and you have spent a lot of time in federalism. And so give us that linchpin connection in terms of federalism, in terms of the Constitutional Studies Master's Program, and why everyone should be thinking about federalism.
For liberty, for equality of government, and for the perpetuation of our free institutions, right? For liberty, that we are best ruled, but with those issues that affect us in our daily life by those who have experience in that context, in that environment. So there are a number of things that can be done by local officials that we should leave for local officials. It also is a way of learning how to engage, cooperate, communicate, collaborate, deliberate, and compromise with those who think different than us. The purpose of the Constitution is not to make us all the same, but it's to give us the forum whereby we can come together to resolve, to come to common ground on some of the issues. And that means allowing Utah to do what it wants and California to do what it wants on certain respective issues, and even at the local level.
It's such an important principle, and it's one that as everything becomes more and more nationalized, a lot through social media, this ability to get it back to the states and to the people, to that local level, as you said, is such a critical component for all of that, both for liberty and for the quality of what we're getting out of it, the ability to come together. And I love the way you framed that. It really is not about sameness, it's about oneness in terms of what we're moving forward together. Once again, great announcement coming out of Utah Valley University this week. The Center for Constitutional Studies launches a new master's program in constitutional government, civics, and law that will be led by our guest, Dr. Troy E. Smith. And Dr. Smith, thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck. We look forward to having you back as you engage the students and as you move this whole project forward.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you spreading the message.
Such an important conversation, and I think what's happening there at the Center for Constitutional Studies at Utah Valley University is something we all can be very proud of in the state of Utah, but it has impact across the country and around the world. And I love the fact that Dr. Smith led us to this whole idea that, you know what, this isn't about being politically obsessed. It's not about being politically obsessed, but it is about being principle and policy engaged as citizens and understanding the process. It goes back to a little bit of Schoolhouse Rock and knowing how a piece of legislation begins and how it gets passed and how it gets enacted into law, the branches of government. And some of those very simple civic lessons that we all need to have. This master's program that will help the students really become teachers of social studies in K through 12 in public and private schools. Research. There's also a research track as part of this new master's program that will really add to the network and the conversations in terms of what is happening. And so I think it's so vital for us to recognize that, to understand that, and then to be part of it. And I just want to emphasize again, it's not about being politically obsessed. That is exhausting. That is exasperating. But we all can be principle and policy engaged, to be well informed, to know what's going on, to know the process, especially at the local level. We finished that conversation with Dr. Troy Smith talking about how important it is at the local level, that federalism component, that the government that's closest to the people is going to govern best, is going to be most transparent and most accountable to the people. But that also requires we, the people, to be part of that in a way that's meaningful and in a way that's powerful. And then finally, I just want to reemphasize one other thing from Dr. Smith, and that is this whole idea that this is not, the Constitution is not designed to make us all the same. Oneness is not sameness in this country. It's about valuing the differences and then understanding the processes and the disciplines that the founders recognized. These are features of the Constitution, not bugs, and getting to the integrity of compromise, learning how to work through the process, learning how to bring diverse opinions together in ways that elevate and get to real results. That's what this is about. And we can all do that. Doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes a little bit of engagement and a willingness to engage in the process. All right, we're going to go ahead and step aside for one last break. We'll come back with some final thoughts here on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Troy, I'm a bit biased, but I boldly believe Bish's boasts the best bunch of beloved customers in the business.
That's a bit braggadocious and verbose, but I believe every boast about our beautifully big-hearted brood of RV buying Bish's family.
Buddy, we are beyond #bless.
Which is why we're throwing a huge customer appreciation sale right now.
We're giving our customers the biggest thank you possible with the lowest pricing of the season that already includes prep and dealer fees.
Get all kinds of new RVs with payments starting under $149 per month on approved credit.
Start shopping now at BishesRV/RV Search. And how about 90 days of all play, no pay OAC?
You'll also get a free 1-year Bish Fix membership with any RV purchase. Your fast track to RV service repairs.
Plus, we're giving you an additional $1,000 towards your used travel trailer or fifth wheel trade-in now through June 29th.
Don't miss the customer appreciation sale happening now at Bish's RV in Salt Lake and American Fork, where memories begin.
OAC based on 20% down, 8.99% APR for 180 months. Stock number 79365 and 80972. Subject to prior sale. See dealer for details.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with everything I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of dry AMD called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. For some, colors appear dull or washed out. For others, hazy or blurred vision make it hard to see details, like fine print on price tags. Many have trouble seeing in the dark, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you think you have GA, don't wait. Treatments are available. Ask a retina specialist about FDA-approved treatments for GA and go to GAWon'tWait.com.
Say hello to For You Banking at Zions Bank. Customized banking that's all about you and the way you bank. Whether you're looking to open a new checking account or simply save for the future, we're ready to help with banking that's meant for you. Experience For You Banking today at your local Zions Bank branch or visit zionsbank.com/4u to learn more. Please refer to the deposit account agreement, account disclosure, deposit rate sheet, and personal account schedule of fees available in the online agreement center or speak with a banker for more details. A division of Zions Bank Corporation, N.A. member FDIC.
Hey Utah! When it comes to guiding the growth of our state, you buzzed in with your comments, and we listened to what you had to say. Your feedback on the future of Utah's housing, water, transportation, and open space will continue to help our leaders make important policy decisions, preserving and improving our high quality of life in meaningful ways for years to come. So, thanks for speaking up. Learn more about our state's future at guidingourgrowth.utah.gov.
3 days only. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Save thousands on hot tubs and swim spas. It's a major manufacturer's liquidation of hundreds of in-stock spas. Utah State Fair Park. Hot tubs discounted 40 to 80% to the lowest possible price, starting at $29.99. Free professional delivery. Take possession tomorrow, next week, next month, or next season. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Utah State Fair Park. Shop over a dozen models of swim spas from 11 feet to over 19 feet. Swim spas offer low-impact exercise, active family fun, unsurpassed relaxation, and installation in one day. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Everything must go. Free parking, free admission. You can't afford to miss this. It's a major manufacturer's liquidation of hundreds of in-stock spas.
Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Utah State Fair Park. Visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Josh loves summers in Utah, but he hates to paint year after year, so he called Rhino Shield.
We have a cedar-sided home at the edge of the woods, painted like 1980s beige, and we wanted something that was more of a mid-century and modern look. We were driving around and we saw a sign in somebody's yard and said Rhino Shield. It's not paint.
Rhino Shield's ceramic technology is formulated for our unique climate here in Utah and is Class 1 fire rated.
Gave Rhino Shield a call, and in fact, they were fantastic with the arrangement on schedule. The 25-year guarantee was important to us. This is our forever home, and we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is going to last a long time.
Utah, you can have the 25-year guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield for 10% off the regular price.
I'd say if you're thinking about Rhino Shield, just do it. It's been 2 years now, and it still looks like the day it went on.
This offer is limited, so call 435-246-4466, 435-246-4466, or rhinoshieldwest.com.
Go Rhino Shield.
Have you ever thought about what it would be like to sleep under the most magnificent blanket of stars? Picnic in the middle of gorgeous Red Rock, watching Tony Award-winning plays in a grand outdoor theater. Have you ever hiked through a legendary twisted forest, gazing from spectacular cliffside vistas, overlooking miles and miles of lush forested meadows? Or you should enjoy great museums, galleries, shops, or great dining, all in a special place, combining beauty and all the fun you can imagine. Put the you back in Utah, in Cedar City, Bryan Head, packed full of things you love. Live performances during the Shakespeare Festival, spectacular campsites and cozy cabins, plus hiking, biking, and ATV trails everywhere. Or tee up for 18 holes of year-round golf at Cedar Ridge Golf Course. Or enjoy a friendly game of disc golf at Thunderbird Gardens. Plan your adventure at Cedar City, Bryan Head, and get to know the you in Utah. Details at visitcedarcity.com.
Dave and Debbie.
It's impossible to digest and consume all of the news that's now coming at us through either social media or through web pages or through the radio. Pick what is most impactful in your life and focus on that. And that's what Dave and I do every single morning. We pick those issues that are most important to our listeners and we boil it down so it's digestible. It's simple to understand.
I think we're trying to find the essence of the story. You know, you can't be an expert on all things, but that doesn't mean you can't be curious and really find out more and educate yourself and learn the complexities of an issue. But I think all of us start at ground zero on everything. Ask questions, show that curiosity.
And then if you need more research, you can always go to KSLNewsRadio.com and learn more.
Listen for Dave and Dejanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, losing at the Republican convention didn't keep Congressman John Curtis from getting a convincing win in yesterday's primary. Second, police in Logan actually had to exhume a body to solve a decades-old cold case. And third, new restrictions at the southern border mean many more people are being deported. 93 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It is great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, I want to go back to a conversation we had just a little earlier on. Of course, tomorrow there will be the big CNN presidential debate. We'll simulcast that here on KSL News Radio tomorrow night. And it's the first opportunity of the 2024 election cycle where you'll have both the current and the former president on the same debate stage. We've talked about the rules and some of the changes that'll be part of this, including cut mics, mute buttons, no audience, no staff interaction, which is an interesting one, about 2-minute answers, 1-minute rebuttals, and it should be a very interesting thing. But as we approach that, if you listen to the program at all, you know I think we should be doing debates completely different than what they've evolved or maybe devolved into over the last several decades. They really have become these very scripted, who can get the best one-liner in, you get a hard question, you've got your 3 talking points, you go through it, you throw out a couple of pejoratives against your opponent or against the opposing political party, and then you move on to the next question. I think you learn far more about a candidate by having them have to talk more, not less. Anybody can memorize a 30-second answer. Anyone can memorize a 60 or even a 90-second answer. I think the longer people have to talk about something, the more you find out about how they think, what they prioritize, and how they would actually lead. So I would love to have a segment of this debate where the moderators, rather than setting up some sort of gotcha question or some sort of hostile interaction between the two candidates, to just say the word guns, border, and then have them respond to that word. You'll learn a lot about what they think about that. Not what they've been scripted, not what they can do as a soundbite, but what do they actually do? What do they actually mean? I think we should gamify part of the debate process. Do it like a game of chess. You get 15 total minutes in this round. We're going to ask you 4 questions. You can use that time however you like. And then you start going through the questions, and you would learn the priorities of the candidates because they may take 5 minutes on one issue, but then they'd only have 30 seconds to talk about another. But you'd learn which one was more important to them because they would have to choose. I think there's a host of things that we can do to change the way the debates are done. But here's what I want to finish off with. I want to go back to this conversation we had with Adam Phillips from Interfaith America earlier in the program because he challenged that we should listen different to the debate. As voters and potential voters, that we should listen as a civic pluralist. A civic pluralist. Now, being a civic pluralist is not about abandoning political convictions or involvement. It's not about being passive, nor is it about being passive-aggressive. It's not about getting rid of your values. It's about embracing them and then learning how to compromise and have different kinds of conversations. And so as we talked with Adam Phillips, we went through some ways to listen, 5 ways to listen as a pluralist, a civic pluralist. So the first thing that Adam suggested is that we look at identity. When you listen to the candidate, how do they talk about identity? Do they emphasize respect and valuing identities, whether it's based on religion or race or sexual orientation, a whole host of other factors? Is there respect and dignity, even divinity, across the differences, and bringing that uniqueness? Or is this all about dividing up and pitting people against one another? Another way to look at it from a pluralist standpoint, a civic pluralist, is to look at faith. Is faith seen as a bridge or a divide? Are the references to faith employed to unify diverse communities, or is it about sowing more division based on religious differences? A civic pluralist acknowledges the role of faith communities. We've talked about that a lot over the past couple of weeks on this program, and what can be done. And why whether you are a person of faith or a person of no faith. Faith and faith-based organizations make a difference in our communities and can be part of an important bridge between government and individuals, meeting a whole host of needs. So how do the candidates talk about that? What about institutions? This is one I care deeply about and am deeply concerned about, because we have many politicians on debate stage that are spending a lot of time undermining our confidence and trust in the institutions of government, whether that's undermining trust in the Supreme Court or the Congress or the system. So as you listen, as a civic pluralist, does the candidate talk about solutions and reinforcing, or are they just looking for more areas of grievance, that it's rigged, about division? Because as I've said many times, when we start to lose our trust in the institutions, I think we've already lost a lot of trust in our leaders and our politicians in particular. They're not always leaders, by the way. But then we start losing trust in the institutions. And then sadly, that starts to bleed out into our communities, and we lose trust with one another. And we have stress tested this country in a lot of different ways. We've never stress tested it in the absence of trust. Two other quick points in terms of listening to the debate as a civic pluralist is about cooperation. Is it cooperation or division? Is it about the integrity of compromise? Or is it just about division, power over zero-sum game? And finally, diversity. Is diversity a treasure or is it a threat? And those are just some of the things I think are an interesting way to think about what will happen tomorrow night on CNN, simulcast here on KSL News Radio. So let's not only watch different, let's listen different. Let's see what we learn. Then we'll come back and we'll talk about it together. That wraps it up for us on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. I am Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, as you go out into the world, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan, 91 degrees, KSL's top story. Today, Utah took another big step toward hosting the 2034 Winter Olympics. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobabe with details.
Today was the first time the Committee for the Games presented their plan to all the IOC members. This was a private meeting. Salt Lake City, Utah Committee for the Games President Fraser Bullock says that even though it was very technical, they received a warm reception. The next big step comes up on July 24th when the IOC will officially vote on whether to award the Games to Salt Lake City.
We believe we're in excellent shape, but until the vote is taken, we are absolutely